Well, good evening, everyone. This is Keith with Positively Osceola, and welcome to another one of our evening coffee club discussions. And as I always point out, this is not a prop. It is the real deal, a tool, a resource, something I enjoy. So kind of a special night tonight. We have some really amazing community leaders, some guests. So Positively Osceola is extraordinarily honored to have these fine young men as part of our show tonight. I will not be too active in tonight. Just want to kind of let everyone know kind of what this is and how it's set up. And then I'll turn it over to and introduce two of our guests, both from Chamber of Commerce's in our local community. So the basic background of tonight is we wanted to give an opportunity to Osceola County Sheriff candidates. Obviously, this is an election cycle that we're in the midst of, with all of the other things that happen to be going on in 2020 that is still happening in our year. So we reached out to all four Osceola County Sheriff candidates. We did so by email. We did follow up with that email with texts, trying to make sure that we had successfully connected with all the candidates. We're certainly a busy world, so wanted to make sure everybody indeed was reached out to. We did speak to, obviously, Mike Fisher, who is here with us tonight, and Marco Lopez. We also reached out to Tony Fernandez. Unfortunately, Tony, there was a death in his family, an immediate family, and as much as he wanted to be with us tonight, he was unable to do so. So all of our best to Mr. Fernandez. We also reached out to the current sheriff, Russ Gibson, a couple times as well, as with everyone else. And Mr. Gibson chose to not be a part of tonight's discussion. So we certainly respect that. Wanted to point that out tonight to everyone. And we also want to point out that our two moderators, which I'll introduce now, both represent chambers of commerce's. And no, they're not endorsing anyone in this discussion tonight. They're simply helping us. They're partners tonight with Positively Osceola and making sure this is done in a wonderfully professional manner. And I appreciate them both. Just going to take the time now to introduce them. So it's kind of a Brady Bunch moment again, so we can point the right way. This young man right there is Don Long. He is the CEO and president of the Lake Nona Regional Chamber of Commerce. How are you doing tonight, Don?
Doing great, Keith. How about you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And a little to his direction that way, if I do that again, is John Newstreet. He is also the CEO and president of the Kissimmee Osceola Chamber of Commerce. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
So we're just about to hand it off to you guys, and you can take on the introductions from that point. So you both will be asking the questions. We've spoken to both candidates and we laid out kind of the guidelines. We refrained from calling this a debate tonight. Instead, we're calling it an online discussion because I think that's more of a casual feel that we'll certainly achieve tonight. So each one of the CEOs will introduce one of the candidates, and then we'll commence with questions. Answers, we're going to keep them somewhere around 2 minutes each. And there's certainly a 30-second availability after that other candidate speaks. If they feel like they have to say something more to rebut or just to follow up, that's certainly fine as well. Won't set off any sirens or bells tonight for time penalties or anything like that. We're going to keep it much more friendly level, and I'll just raise my hand or a brush perhaps. So at this point, Don and John, why don't you go ahead and take it over? If I've forgotten anything, please let me know. But other than that, please take over.
No, John, is it okay if I start it off?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, Keith, thank you for the opportunity. And just on behalf of the Lake Nona Regional Chamber of Commerce, I want to say it's an honor to participate in this. Everyone knows Lake Nona is a newer region or a newer addition to the community around Orange County, but also Osceola County. And we are deeply concerned with what goes on in both of these counties. So it's really an honor for us to be involved with this. And thank you for inviting us. We appreciate it.
Of course.
I wanted to tell you a little bit about Marco Lopez as an introduction. Marco Lopez is a 17-year retired Osceola County Sheriff Deputy who is a devoted father and Christian, a Navy veteran, and thank you for your service, Marco. I'm a former Marine myself, so thank you for your service. And I know that we feel there's needs to be a change in the administration and is committed to make a difference. Marco is determined to better the work environment in the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, as well as bringing more transparency to the department. So thank you, Marco, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Don, and thank you, John, and also Mike for being here. And I really appreciate this opportunity to interact with our communities. And I know Mike personally, and we have the best interest in keeping our communities safe. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you, Marco. I'm John Newstreet, the President and CEO of Kissimmee, Osceola County Chamber of Commerce. Again, want to thank Keith for bringing this information out to the community, my colleague Don for his leadership in the Lake Nona area to help business. And I want to congratulate on behalf of the Kissimmee Chamber the candidates who are here with us tonight for stepping up and putting yourself out there in the public realm. It's not easy, especially the job you're seeking to undertake. So we wish you all the best and want to congratulate you for taking this next step and trying to be a public servant further to the long careers you've had. So thank you for that. I get to introduce Mike. Mike Fisher has been a resident of Kissimmee for the last 39 years. After retiring from the Osceola County Sheriff's Office as a captain in 2016, Mike still has a passion to continue to serve Osceola County and its diverse citizens. He has over 29 years of comprehensive law enforcement experience at the Osceola County Sheriff's Office and wants to bring back pride to the Sheriff's Office through full transparency, professionalism, and most importantly, the concept of service. He wants to make the Osceola County Sheriff's Office the best trained, equipped, and performing Sheriff's Office in the state of Florida. So we welcome Mike. I'll give it to Don to ask the first question.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Keith. Marco, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off. You get a few minutes to talk about yourself, too.
No, you did good. You did good. I just wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity. And, like Marco said, him and I have been friends for a long time. So I do appreciate the opportunity for both of us to come on here and talk to you guys.
Okay, well, thank you for being here too, Mike. And the first question goes to Marco Lopez. As many of our residents may know, last night there was a protest march in Kissimmee that came as a result of police violence that led to the death of an unarmed man in Minnesota. Let me make this clear. This was not police violence here. It was in Minnesota.
Yes.
It was both peaceful and passionate, but violence has spread across our nation and in some cases our local communities. If you were elected sheriff, what type of training would you put in place in order to ensure that your deputies would never act as the officer did in Minneapolis?
Well, first of all, police reform has been long overdue. We're talking about, it's not just from 92, the Rodney King era. It's been going on long before that. First of all, we definitely need to start getting our federal government involved and mandating our states to have more accountability in the way we teach our officers through our academies on how to work with our communities. And then on the state level, it comes back down to the local law enforcement academies, and they in tune, once we're hired at the sheriff's department, they start implementing and reassuring that we're going to start treating our communities with compassion and never tolerating police misconduct. We got to have the community feel like they're more a part of the sheriff's department, of every law enforcement department agency. And I think that's what we're missing. We need new ideas. We've got law enforcement officers that have been leading departments for 25 and 30 years. All respect to them and their experience. With my broad range of experience, not only pushing a patrol car for 17 years, I was in the military 22 years. I was a business owner. I have extensive anti-terrorism training. We bring technologies to the table. Working with our communities and developing that trust concept, I think it's really important, and making sure that we have complaint review boards, civilian advisory boards, so they can feel that they're a part of the department, and we can start building that bridge and reinstating that trust.
Great.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead, Mike. You can respond to the question as well.
I think basically the first thing that we need to do is we need to explore the fact that we need to look at some type of peer intervention program within the sheriff's office to specifically address what you were talking about was how do we train our officers? What are we doing to better our officers in responding to that? I know from the aspect of the Minneapolis case, they taught the vascular restraint, which is basically, in essence, a chokehold. And we've gotten away from that years ago in law enforcement. So we have that opportunity to move beyond that. We've completely, basically got rid of that from our policies and procedures. I think the best thing we need to look at is peer intervention programs. And also, it has to be a holistic approach of how we train these officers from the time they start in the police academy to the time they go to the field training officer. And it has to be a constant training thing where when I first started, my field training officer, it was a matter of weeks and we were out there and then you kind of learn trial by fire. And, it's not necessarily the way we need to do that. We need to indoctrinate them when they come in about how to address people correctly, communication skills. A lot of our younger officers coming in now are really tied up with the electronics in the car. We're not really teaching them verbal skills, de-escalation skills. We really need to focus on that type of stuff to look at using your mouth to get you out of situations. And I think that is the biggest thing that we lack in law enforcement right now, where when I was younger and coming up in law enforcement, most of the time we were said, look, you need to talk your way out of things. And I think we've gotten completely away from that in law enforcement. We need to talk and communicate with people without just quickly, rushing to a judgment on things and having a robotic approach to things. And again, that has to start in the police academy. That has to start from the minute they enter a law enforcement agency's doors. And you have to have that, and it has to start at the top. And that has to come from leadership. If we want real change in law enforcement, it has to start with leadership. You cannot start at the bottom and just assume everybody's going to, go along with the program. That has to be emulated and presented from leadership in law enforcement. Say, these are the things we will and won't tolerate. And then you also have to, as a leader in law enforcement, open the communication, quit siloing information within law enforcement agencies. And I can tell you that officers are stifled from, saying things that are wrong just because they fear their job, they fear losing money, they have a family, even just minor things. And I'm not talking about just use of force incidents. I'm just talking about general things that they see wrong. In law enforcement, we've had that don't speak up. And we really have to stop that. And as leaders, we can correct that. And we can be involved in that and saying, look, we're giving you the opportunity to be free thinkers. We want you to be involved and open that communication path. And I think the thing is, the biggest thing about that is we, again, going back to where we have to start that from, we have to start that from the very beginning when they get into the academy. It has to start from the academy. It has to go into field training. It has to go, and then constant training throughout things that they go through. We can't just say, well, you're done with field training and here you go. That's about it. And I think that's a lot of where we've kind of sent these officers out there, and we don't have that constant training throughout. And there's several programs you can look at. Peer intervention, revamping our field training officer program within the sheriff's office. We have 1- and 2-year officers now training new recruits, which is absolutely absurd. So that's the brief answer there. I'll turn it back over to you, Don.
I'd like to add, that's fine.
Thank you, Mike. Yes,
Yep.
Go ahead, Marco.
So one thing that we're missing here is diversity. Especially in Central Florida, Osceola County now is at about a 60%, let's say 70% total minority-based community. I'm talking to all minorities that live in Osceola County, and we're seeing that there's been a big influx of minorities moving to the Central Florida area. If you can't diversify your police force to make them look like the people you serve, you're never going to have that trust. Let's start recruiting. Let's start holding people accountable. Transparency. Go to these neighborhoods. Oh, we have 15,000 Haitians in Osceola County and Poinciana alone. We haven't recruited one. What's the problem here? Talk to these community leaders. Reach out to these pastors of these churches. Let's bring them on board. Let's pay for their academy. Let's give them some further education. Let's give them something to look forward for in the future. You put them back to work in those same communities, and guess what? You've just built a bridge. You have to look like the people you serve. That's part of police reform. If you can't do that, we're failing, and we're going to continue to fail as a law enforcement department.
Okay, thank you for that rebuttal, Marco, or comment. And now over to John.
Yes, sir. I got the next question. As we go to the polls, it'll be a long ballot. lots of choices for the voters. And so we'd like to hear from you about why you are the best candidate for sheriff. I'll start with Mike.
Yeah, I think that my proven track record and 30 years of law enforcement service right here in Osceola County at the sheriff's office. I spent 16 years as a deputy before getting promoted to sergeant. I spent 5 years as a sergeant. I spent almost 7 years as a lieutenant, and then I was a captain when I retired. I have the most experience in law enforcement operations of any of the current candidates. I have the most leadership experience of any of the current candidates. I think that was what qualifies me from an experience level. Not to mention the fact that I have currently work at Universal Studios, with one of the most diverse companies in the state of Florida. And I'm one of their senior managers for security. So I have proven track record of the private industry as well as the public sector.
Thank you, Mike. Marco?
Well, first of all, I probably have the broadest range of experience in all these candidates. One, when I was 17 years old, I decided to join the military. My parents had to sign a waiver. 22 years of total experience. I've had military command leadership schools, logistics, operations, planning. I was during Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was a liaison, worked with the Department of the Army Transportation, and we helped get the Japanese, South Korean, and the Taiwanese Army not only off their ships all the way into country and then deployed into Iraq. I also was a deputy for, a little over about 17 years. I reached the rank of sergeant. I know about this community. I know the needs of the community. I speak 3 different languages. Yo hablo español perfectamente bien. You don't need a translator when you have a sheriff that actually can directly communicate with the minority community that they serve. It's essential. It's imperative. I was a business owner. I teach anti-terrorism training, how to survive an active shooter. I have extensive anti-terrorism experience, which we have seen that it's a pattern and it's the wave of the future. We got to get into that Israeli mindset concept where everyone in the community is one, working to keep us safe. Gang violence is something that's been here. Crime is climbing. We need special task force to help start combating these.
What was the question? What? Sorry, Marco.
That's part of the experience. We're going to have that type, my experience, we're going to help combat that and start implementing these programs to help get this into the future.
Thank you, Marco. We'll get you a 30-second reply, Mike, if you wish.
So you broke up on the initial question, John, just from on my end. I don't know if it came across or not. What was the original question? I'm sorry about that.
The original question is why you're the best candidate as voters go to the polls.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I thought you had asked a different question because you kind of froze on my side there.
My apologies. Yeah.
No, I don't necessarily have a rebuttal with Marco. Again, I look at the fact that my experience brings to the fact that I have the most law enforcement leadership experience of any current candidate. We can talk about what our experiences are outside of law enforcement. I have experiences outside of law enforcement as well, but all of my experiences here within Osceola County. I grew up in Buenaventura Lakes. I moved here in 1980, so I'm very well informed about what the community is about and what the things that are going on around here.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Back to you, Don.
Hey guys, would you mind if we have a lot of people that have popped in a little bit later and are wondering why we don't have 4 candidates showing here tonight. Would you mind if I kind of went over that again real quick?
Please.
So for anybody who may have just joined us, we're glad you're here. How this started is I'll make it brief. We reached out to all 4 candidates for Osceola County Sheriff. We did that simultaneously through email and also via text just to follow up to make sure we hadn't missed anybody. Unfortunately, Mr. Fernandez, he's had a death in the immediate family recently. He wanted to be here tonight, but he was unable to join us because of that. We also reached out to the 2 gentlemen with us tonight, Marco Lopez and Mike Fisher, both accepting the invitation. We reached out also at the same time to the current sheriff, Mr. Russ Gibson, and he said he was not going to be chosen to not be a part of tonight's discussion. And again, we respect everybody's decision. And so if anybody's just checking in, that's why you're seeing the 2 candidates that we have tonight. And again, our 2 moderators are both from the Chamber of Commerce's, the Lake Nona Regional Chamber of Commerce with Don Long, John Newstreet from the Kissimmee Osceola County Chamber of Commerce. And they are not endorsing any of the candidates, but they are here assisting us tonight. Thank you.
I like the sign, Mike.
I guess it's my turn. All right, I think we're back to Marco again. Marco, what is Osceola County Sheriff's Office most pressing law enforcement issue, and how would you go about effectively tackling it?
Well, I've been out there talking to the community. There is definitely a division. A lot of people that are moving to our community right now are bilingual, and some of them don't speak English due to unfortunate incidents, having to relocate to Central Florida. A lot of them would love to see more bilingual police officers come into their house and taking their reports. That old concept that we're in America, we speak English, that doesn't work anymore. We're changing a different direction in America today, and that's just part of the problem we have. There's a distrust within the sheriff's department and the community, and they express themselves consistently. A lack of trust from the department. They feel there's a big gang problem here, that there's an epidemic, a heroin epidemic that's been plaguing our communities. There's so many to mention. They would love to feel more involved with the sheriff's department. They would love to have someone that would communicate them or give them their options that would speak more Spanish for the community. And I think that's really important, especially we're at about 60% minority-based Hispanics in Osceola County alone. We really need to start recruiting more and making them feel like they're a part of this community through education and through employment.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Mike, would you like me to read the question again, or did?
No, I got you this time.
I just want to make sure the connection's good.
Yeah. It's probably on my end anyway. But the biggest thing I think facing the Osceola County Sheriff's Office right now is a shortage of manpower. We're 46 people short, the last that I was told. We cannot retain employees. We're losing good officers to other departments, and not necessarily based on pay. They have not added a patrol deputy to our staffing level in patrol since 2016 when I left. They have the same staffing levels today in patrol as they do when I left in 2016, and yet the budget's gone up $20 million. So my question is, where are the people? And I understand that we've had the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas incident, and that was 2 years ago. We've had officers put into SROs. The question is, why can we not keep people? Why can we not recruit people? And you can say that it's all about pay, but it's not necessarily about pay. It's about the internal climate at the sheriff's office. It's about leadership. We lack the structured leadership that we need at the sheriff's office to keep our employees here, to keep tenured deputies here, and to continue serving this community with a high quality officer and not lose them to other agencies. That's the biggest problem we have right now. Okay,
thank you, Mike. Marco, reply.
Well, I'd like to add also, competitive wages. It costs us about, $140,000 to train a deputy from start to finish, and then they decide to go to Orange County. Morale is a big factor, but we really got to be competitive with the surrounding agencies for some of the people that we're losing. It's not everybody doesn't leave because of morale, of course. I think a lot of them do it because of the money. A lot of people have gone away from serving the public because it comes from your heart. We got to try to recruit people that really want to be involved in their community so we can start making these changes and start policing our communities effectively.
Okay, thank you, Marco.
Can I add to that, Don, or do you care?
You can add.
Yeah, just briefly, and I just want to piggyback. I don't necessarily think it has to do with wages, because you can't say that we will ever be Orange County Sheriff's Office. We won't have that tax base. We won't have the tax base to pay our officers what OPD pays. So there's things that we have to offer internally that provide an incentive for why you want to work here. And again, that goes back to leadership. Why do people want to work here? People leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses, not bad jobs. So again, you look at that from the aspect of, I don't necessarily think people are leaving so much for wages. We will never be OPD. We will never be able to pay the money OPD pays. And Marcos knows that as well as I do. We've talked about that. So we can't just focus on wages as the only factor of why we're losing people. And we have to absolutely recruit from our own county. We have to recruit from right here.
Okay. Over to you, John.
Appreciate it. So good segue into this next question. The Sheriff's Office has a $76.6 million budget funded from Osceola County and its taxpayers. How does your experience make you the best choice to be steward over the sheriff's office budget? Mike, did you get all that, or?
I got it. Yep.
Got it. Very good. I'll check with you, Marco, to make sure. But Mike, go ahead on the budget, $76.6 million. You want to talk about why you're the best steward of those taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, because I have the experience. I have done budgets. I have worked on the sheriff's office budget specifically for a number of years. I understand where we need to appropriate funds at. I think with the budget, we need to invest a little bit more in technology to work smarter, not harder. Which will help, especially as a force multiplier when you add technology to things. I've been big on technology ever since I've been at the sheriff's office. I've implemented several programs that have saved officers time and money to basically, from the agency of allowing them to do their job a little bit more efficiently. I think from the aspect of the private sector, I also have the experience of budgeting in the private sector where it's completely different. And those, John and Don, you guys have probably worked in the private sector. Doing a budget for a profit company versus a government entity are completely two totally different things. But I have the experience of how to save money and where we need to cut that from. And right now when we're paying $500 extra a patrol car just to have it in green, yet we're short on patrol cars now because Dodge doesn't make them in green right now because the call is for white patrol cars. So the question is, you buy 100 patrol cars and you're paying $500 extra for green. That's $50,000 that you're paying just to have green patrol cars. And to me, I just don't see the common sense approach of that. The current sheriff, he's had 2 brand new cars since he's been there. If you add up the funds in that, that's almost $100,000 in vehicles that he's had since he's been there. There's no sense for that. We have civilian employees taking cars home. We've never had that under the past sheriff or previous sheriffs that I've worked for. We don't need to have civilian personnel taking cars home that aren't on mandatory recall. I just don't understand the need behind that. And again, that saves money. Does it save tons of money? It may or may not, but in the long run, it saves on a vehicle. You don't have to buy a vehicle. You don't have to service it. You don't have to maintenance. You don't have to plan to get a new one. I also look at our leasing program. We went to leasing patrol cars. A number of years ago, we proved that leasing patrol cars does not work. Buying the patrol cars and reselling them at the end, you can make money back on those patrol cars. Right now, we're leasing patrol cars, and we're going to pay on those leases forever. And we probably won't be able to recoup the money we got into them selling them. And not to mention, when you resell them, who wants a green patrol car? Most people don't. I think you've got to look at it from a common sense approach when you budget stuff and when you use and be a steward of the public's trust and money.
Thank you much. Marco, if you get a chance, talk about you being the steward of the budget.
Well, going back to a budget, we got to all understand that at the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, the majority of that budget is fixed and it goes straight to salaries. The rest of that budget is allocated to the departments for equipment, for vehicles. You're going to have different departments that are going to charge of making sure that money is used wisely. Going back to what Mike's saying, there has been a lot of mismanaged funds. We have a great accounting department, and once you start sending these budgets out, and we start with that transparency and letting the community see how we're allocating their funds, I think it's going to be something that everyone's going to be able to understand how we're spending their resources. I was a business owner for many years. It's simple, 100,000, $1 million. You're going to run it as efficient as you can with the money you have. We just got to make sure that if we don't need it, that old concept says if you don't use it, you lose it. We need to get away from that, give it back to the commissioners, or put it somewhere where it's going to work to benefit the community.
Thank you very much, Marco. Mike, just a quick reply if you wish.
Not really so much to Marcos, but just the budget in general. I look at the fact that last year's budget, not the current budget that we're in, we gave $5 million back to the county. Now, if you over budgeted $5 million, there should be some accounting questions there. Why? And what are you asking for more money this year for? There's been no answers to that. They held a public forum. The county commissioners had people looking into budgets. There was questions asked of the sheriff personally by this budget committee, and he refused to answer them. He sent the attorney to the office to answer those questions. So I don't understand why we're not holding him accountable for the money being spent, explaining that in person. You're running the office. That's what you got elected to do. Step up and speak about it.
Thank you. Don, your question.
All right. Thanks, John. Yeah. I know we're all in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic right now at the moment, but before this came along, one of the
What's that? We're in riot mode now, I think.
Yeah.
well,
Everybody's been asking, you know, we've gone away.
Everybody forgot about COVID. Yeah, exactly.
we've got two areas of attack that are primary in our mind now. But before that, it wasn't a pandemic, but an epidemic that affected the country was the opioid crisis that everyone was going through in different regions, and surely that affected Osceola County. And it's had devastating consequences, including addiction, overdoses, and that also leads to increases in crime as they try to find their drug, the opioids that they need. If elected as Osceola County Sheriff, what would your strategic solution be to bring long-lasting and strategic results that would fight that crisis?
You mean
Marco?
the opioid or drugs in general?
Opioid.
Well, if we can go back to the war on drugs, when Reagan started that, it's something that's going to be really out of the control at a local level. I mean, we have so many bad influences pushing this stuff into our country. It's something that we really need a lot more funding if we're going to combat. We recently at the Sheriff's Department, our OTIB unit was taken over by FDLE for whatever reasons. It hasn't been explained to the public. I think that we definitely need to come up with some good task force that are going to start combating that opioid epidemic, asking for more grants. We need money, we need more manpower and education starting at a lower level. Also, you can arrest these guys for heroin all day long, but if you don't hit the root of the problem, treat these drug addicts, you're going to continue. It's just going to be one revolving door. So, this is something that not only the sheriff's office needs to combat, but we need to work with other entities to give us that help, like our commissioners. I mean, if there's funding for other things that we get from the tourist tax, hey, we can put that in there and start working to try to make this a little bit better place for all of us to live. But the war on drugs is going to be something that we need to attack through, how can you say, grants, federal government. And, on top of that, we have a big PTSD issue with veterans coming back from the war, that on top of the pain pills, they start getting hooked on opioid. Education is key. Treating the root of the problem is what we need to do, but it's something that the Sheriff's Department can't do alone.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Mike?
Well, as the only candidate that actually worked in organized narcotics my career, I can tell you that the opioid issue is out of control, or the dealers are out of control, because, as Marco said, OCIB, Osceola County Investigative Bureau, which was our local task force, involved St. Cloud Police Department, KPD, and the Sheriff's Office. Both police departments had pulled their people out of it. We were working with, at one point, 3 drug agents in this entire county working mid to high level drug dealers. You can address the addiction issue, and I agree with Marcos that that is an addiction. You just can't continue to put people in jail for that. You got to look at the addiction issue. You have to work with the jail and programs and establish that. We have no programs right now at the Sheriff's Office that deal with addiction issues. So we need to look at that further and try to create those and work with the jail and the state attorney's office and the court system to establish programs for addictions and counseling, and try to get that help they need there. And we can use drug seizure money for that. But back to the original thing of how do we deal with the opioid crisis? You cannot let drug dealers run throughout Osceola County just willy-nilly dealing drugs. And I'm not talking pot. We're talking high level of cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, especially with the heroin price or situation we have right now. You just can't let that go. And OCIB is charged with that. And because they have had only 3 agents involved in that, the Sheriff's Office, as Marco said, gave it up. And we don't know why they gave it up. And now FDLE is in charge of it. And we really don't have, not necessarily a say, but that's great that we're bringing other people into that. But the question is, why did we turn a blind eye to drug enforcement to begin with under this current sheriff? I don't get that. You have got to absolutely check the drug dealers. You cannot just address one issue of the addiction and try to work on that. And we have established programs for that, and then just completely ignore the drug dealers that are running around. And we do have a drug problem in this county. And if anybody says we don't, they're living in another world. We absolutely have a drug problem in this county. And again, I'm not talking about pot. I'm talking about drugs that are, opioids, cocaine, fentanyl. We have the highest, our overdose rate for 2018 for fentanyl. It went up 278% since this sheriff has taken office. Our overdose rates have went up that much. And this is coming from the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office. This isn't my statistics. So if we're having that high of overdose rate, there is a reality that we're not addressing drug dealers. We're not addressing the drug problem. And yes, we can give people Narcan all they want. And again, we're not addressing where are they getting these drugs from. I mean, for crying out loud, we had an officer at the sheriff's office that died from an overdose. And it's like we just completely, as a sheriff's office, we just completely ignored that. And to me, that hit home. I mean, I knew this guy, and for the agency just not even think about the fact that where's the guy getting his drugs from? He worked in a narcotics unit, and I'm not saying it's bad, but people can get hooked on that. Our own officers can get hooked on that, and we have to look at that deeply from the addiction standpoint and get programs in place, and work with the county jail, work with the court system. Work with the state attorney's office and other nonprofits that are locally here, either in Orange County or here, to establish and provide them some of this drug seizure money that we have to put into those things.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Marco, any comments?
I'd like to add, other than just the heroin epidemic, we have a lot. I'm a veteran, and I thank every veteran that comes back from the Middle East, from Afghanistan, that has served this great country. They come back sometimes with issues deeper than what anybody can understand. They see things that no one will ever see or can imagine to see. They get hooked on pills. You go to the doctor, this hurts pill. They develop a tolerance for it. I have ran into veterans in the streets. We do not have a veterans liaison department at the sheriff's department right now. We need to implement that. We need to have veterans that'll work in those departments to help when we counter these people during domestic violence calls, in the street, homelessness. How about those veterans court program that we have in Osceola County and run them through the veterans courts? There's a lot of advantages in our community that we can help and assist our veterans to help facilitate their process to establish themselves back in our communities. And the only way to do that is to work and take advantage of these programs.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Marco. We appreciate it. And back to John.
Very good. Thank you. So my final question for the evening relates to homelessness. This is an issue that is pervasive around all society, and it's a tough one to tackle, but the law enforcement community plays a big part in it. It affects businesses. The chamber, I know, we've been engaged in following it and trying to be a solution provider, or at least a contributor to finding a solution with it. And especially along the West 192 corridor, where we have those transitional hotel motels that have long-term residents, whatnot. So homelessness in all of its colors. If you could talk to how you might take on the issue of homelessness in Osceola County, we'll start with Mike again.
Yeah, first off, you're right, John. Homelessness is an issue across all of Central Florida. And what I find out, or what I understand, is that no law enforcement agency in Central Florida region has a homeless outreach service team. We have them in Hillsborough County. We have them down in South Florida. So my goal as your sheriff is to create a homeless outreach service team. And this is basically be some deputies and probably a supervisor that are in charge of a specific unit that would address homelessness and try to help the people that are homeless connect with the proper resources to get in touch and to get out of homelessness. The reality is we're called at the time of crisis, law enforcement is. Most of these nonprofits are not open, but from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And the reality is 10 o'clock at night, we're called to deal with a homeless issue. And the deputy doesn't really have the resources available to assist them homeless people into getting where they need to be. So the idea would be to create a unit that understands and works with the homeless associations or nonprofits, as well as our homeless folks that are living out on West 182 or wherever in this county, and try to reconnect them or connect them with the resources and be the, quote, boots on the ground for some of the nonprofits that we have here, reaching out, providing them services, have some counseling services, and have a specific team that addresses and deals with that. I'm really surprised that no law enforcement agency in the state of in Central Florida right now has that. And to me, we need that. Far too long we have been away from the homeless table. On the issue of homelessness, law enforcement has. We need a seat at that table, even if we need to be the focal point of bringing all the rest of the people together to try to combat that and help these people to get where they need to be, get them into issues of and out of homelessness. The other thing I'd like to do is create a reintegration center where when you come out of jail or when you come out of prison, you go into society and you don't have a job. You don't have a driver's license, and create this office where when they know they're being released from prison, you can go to this location, and we have nonprofit services there. It's run by the sheriff's office. We can provide you with information, have a place to get your driver's license, have work information. And the idea there is, again, you're keeping them from being homeless because you're trying to get them jobs when they come out of jail or prison. And again, that reintegration center, I think, would work specifically well with our homeless group. So, and you have these, if you look around Florida, you have these at other places that we don't currently have anybody or have those type of units. So that's my goal, is to create a homeless outreach service team to deal with the homeless issues countywide. We could work with the police departments as well in addressing that. And again, this isn't about arresting people for panhandling. This is about helping the homeless find their way and literally having a connection with the sheriff's office or law enforcement. If you look around the country of any of these agencies that have these programs, they work. 100% they work.
Thank you, Mike. Marco, your take on homelessness in Osceola County?
Homelessness is going to be an issue that we have been seeing throughout America for many years. A lot of people don't like to see the homeless out there. They like to try to use the law enforcement departments to kind of shuffle them away or shoo them away to the next counties. We're going to have to go back to that old-fashioned everyone comes together as one community to help solve this problem. We need more counseling, more education programs. A lot of these homeless, very small percentage, are down on their luck. You talk to them. A lot of them have addictions, not only drugs, but alcohol. Some of them have mental health issues. We need to get with our local organizations, like Mike says, more outreach, making that contact. If you're a deputy and you see him panhandling, talk to this guy. They're a great source of information. I have captured and apprehended many wanted subjects just by befriending the homeless people. We need to treat the root of the problem. Just a couple years ago, I believe the board agreed to paint all the lights purple on West 192, and it was like $4 or $5 million. Why don't we take that and buy some of these abandoned hotels or buildings, remodel them with some grants, with some federal money, and we start getting these homeless to establish some residency. And then we educate them. We give them a trade, put them back into the workforce. You got to give them some meaning. You can't just go out there and give them, a sandwich or two here now and then. You got to get to the root of the problem, just like drug addiction. If you don't treat the root of the problem, you're just going to continue to have a revolving door. We can talk about this all day. But if you don't get the right departments and organizations behind you to do this, you're beating a dead horse. Perfect example, going back to that budget, you give us a budget to operate. Now am I going to start asking for an extra budget to help the homeless? It goes hand in hand. You have to have other organization, other resources to help combat this problem.
Thank you, Marco. Mike, just a quick reply if you'd like.
Yeah, I think the question that the public probably has is, how are you going to afford this? And the reality is, you can apply for grants, community block development grants. The sheriff's office has none currently. We don't even have a grant writer, a full-time grant writer at the sheriff's office. And that was one of the promises this current sheriff had made in his first-time election, that he would have a full-time grants writer. We still don't have that. So we need somebody at the sheriff's office that is a full-time grants writer, that's what they do. They go out and look for grants. They look for money. Community block development grants can afford these or fund these types of programs. They're funded across the United States with these types of community block development grants. So you can fund that, and then it's like, well, you have the positions. We have the positions currently at the sheriff's office. We just don't have enough deputies. We have enough positions right now within community services that you could start this unit and add a supervisor. Again, the money is there. It just needs to be properly used and have a focus on where we're going to do that. And again, we just don't have that in the leadership of the sheriff's office.
Thank you both. As I turn the show over to Don for the final question, I just want to thank both of you again for being here tonight and wish all the candidates for sheriff and all candidates on the ballot the best of wishes and best luck. Keep it clean, but good luck.
Thank you,
Thank you.
There we go. Osceola County, as everyone knows, is probably the fastest growing county in Florida right now. One of the things that concerns me that goes along with that is what has been seen in some of the other areas of Florida. In 2019, there were almost 1,800 victims of human trafficking in Florida. A fifth of those victims were children, and the majority of them, of course, were female. With these kinds of concerning statistics, why do you think we're not hearing more about this issue? And Marco, how would you address human trafficking if elected as our next Osceola County Sheriff?
That's a very good question, especially when it's been brought to light that human trafficking is like some of the largest is happening right here in the state of Florida. We have individuals who come to our country and due to different circumstances, maybe they're illegal, not illegal, they get extortioned if they don't comply with human trafficking type things. We need to have more officers on the ground, develop a task force that works directly with human trafficking, but we need the funding. We need to pull the funding from somewhere. I've walked these hotels on West 192. That's where a majority of the human trafficking occurs. We need to walk these hotels. We need to talk to these people who are registering people in the room. We need to make contact when you see a couple rent a room and then you have rotating service of just men coming in and out of there 20, 30, 40, 50 times a day. You can't do this without developing the intelligence, without getting these hotel motel people to work and cooperate with us. I'm not just saying it happens there. It can happen in a house. It can happen in a neighborhood. But we need to get the community more involved and have more education and awareness on the human trafficking. It's a big issue. It's a big topic. And yes, we definitely need to work more with the community to help offset that and attack it a little bit more successfully.
Thank you, Marco. Appreciate that. Mike?
Again, the human trafficking issue, if people don't think that human trafficking is a problem in Osceola County, again, they're not living in reality. We absolutely have a problem with human trafficking here. One of the units that I actually commanded over was the tourism policing unit, and they have dealt with human trafficking cases. Matter of fact, they were the first human trafficking case that we actually made at the sheriff's office under my command at the sheriff's office out on West 192 at a hotel. That unit was disbanded earlier this year. They've just recently put it back into place. We had a human trafficking officer or deputy that was working on human trafficking. And I'm not talking about internet crimes against children. We have a group, a unit that does that. I'm talking about human trafficking. We had a detective for that. We no longer have that detective in place. I don't know if it's because they think that there isn't a human trafficking problem, but there absolutely is. And I think what you have to do is you absolutely have to use our undercover units that are currently in place. We need more proactive policing units out on West 192. We also need to teach our deputies about human trafficking in general. A lot of these deputies are young. We have a very young workforce right now, and we're not teaching them police work. Plain and simple, we're not teaching them police work and what the cues are to look for when you're talking to a victim of human trafficking, and we're not providing them that training. There's programs out there like the Lifeboat Project that I have talked to and worked with. In Osceola County right now, we have a human trafficking task force. And the head of that human trafficking task force is from the county jail. Why is it not from a law enforcement agency? I have no clue. So that just tells me that from the sheriff's office aspect, who actually should have somebody leading that or being involved in that, that they don't necessarily care that human trafficking is going on, or they're just oblivious to it. And again, it comes down to leadership, the ability to recognize what you get elected for, and that's to enforce the laws. We absolutely need a chief law enforcement officer, and right now we don't have that. And it's unfortunate that people are suffering from that. Victims of crimes are suffering from that, especially when you're talking about human trafficking. But we absolutely need somebody to look at that and say, hey, look, we do have a problem with that. Don't turn a blind eye to it. It's legit. Just like Marcos talked earlier about gang problems. I ran our gang unit. I know we have gangs here. I know we have a gang problem here. And again, we've cut numbers to our gang unit. So I look at it from the aspect of, are we in business to police and do it properly, or are we doing something else? And I just don't get where we're going with that. But the human trafficking thing is huge. And to better police that, we first have to train and acknowledge, we'll first have to train our deputies, but we have to acknowledge that we actually have a problem with that. And right now, I don't think that the sheriff even cares about that, because there's no representation on our human trafficking board, or human trafficking task force board here from the sheriff's office. The lead shouldn't be from the jail, and God bless Mr. Kenny from the jail who stepped up to do that. But it should, I mean, he's in the jail, and I get that he has victims that may come in there and talk to him, but the reality is law enforcement should be heading that up. I mean, he's stuck in the jail doing the things that he's doing. Doesn't mean we can't partner with the jail, but we need somebody out on the street addressing that, like Seminole County has, Orange County has. They all have this stuff. We seem to be lacking. So again, with the human trafficking, it is absolutely a problem. We're not addressing it, and we need to.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Marco,
I think that human trafficking is something that is a very sensitive topic, because it's something that's personal. A lot of people are against it. The problem we have is identifying the trafficking. That's why if we create, how about a community advisory board, when they can come in and we train them to identify signs of human trafficking. Community watch meetings, train them how to identify a potential human trafficking house or human trafficking victim. We need all the eyes and ears we can get on the ground. And our best asset is the community. If we do come across a victim of human trafficking, how about we have a shelter or somewhere where they can go, and we can provide them with the resources, not only to give them shelter from the people who are doing these monstrous acts against them, but how about we help with resources to prosecute these people so they stop and don't ever do this again. But we can't do it on our own. We need help with this. It's something that we go back to funding, we go back to the government, we go back to community leaders. The sheriff is not a one-fix-all problem. We need help also. Eyes and ears on the ground, establishing these boards, getting people to understand the problems in the community, and we need that help so we can combat these epidemics that are happening.
Thank you, Marco. And I guess kind of in closing, Keith, again, thank you for the invitation. And gentlemen, thank you for your insightful remarks. Speaking as someone who runs the Chamber of Commerce that's in Orange County, I have to tell you how important it is that we all realize that it's regional in nature, that criminals don't respect county borders or state borders or anywhere else. That's why it's a concern, I believe, for the entire region, that we all be able to come together and be able to collaborate on the best things that we can do for the region. And this was a great honor to be able to participate in this. Thank you for being here. And I echo John's sentiments. Best of luck. And as we say in the Marine Corps, sometimes the best man will win, and we know they will. So
right.
Good luck.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you both. Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Don. Thank you, John. Marcos, thank you. Good seeing you, buddy.
Thank you too. We'll see you out there soon.
So, Don, we spoke about maybe letting the gentleman take one last final minute just to recap. Would that be okay with both of you?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
How about Marco? You're right.
Can I take a mic minute? That's like what, 10 minutes, or does it can be a Marco? Let me know. I'd like to say, long-term goal of any sheriff is to, reduce crime and keep your community safe. Also, due to everything that's been happening, we definitely have to do some police reform. And it's really important because we need to start gaining the trust of the community that we serve. I think implementing these programs and policies and procedures on how to handle detained subjects, on, not improperly placing your body parts in places like the neck or in the groin area where you can really hurt someone, especially when they're in a position or they're already in custody. Perception is everything. We really need to start sitting with our community and talking about better ways to improve the way we police you. You're a citizen. You give us the permission to police you. We need to police you the way you want to be policed. I think working in cooperation also with other law enforcement departments is really important. Like you say, criminals don't distinguish county to county. They just travel through and do what they have to do to commit crimes. Getting everybody on that same page is, I think, really important. And I think especially myself with my anti-terrorism experience is really going to be that plus that the other candidates don't have, so we can keep this safer and implement these counterterrorism programs, not only to keep our community safer, but also our schools safer. A lot of good things we can do, just need the opportunity. And I really thank everyone here for the questions, and I'm looking forward to be your sheriff.
Mike?
Yeah, I guess to sum it up, that I love the Osceola County Sheriff's Office. Trust me, I've spent most of my adult life there. I love this county, and I think that this job is about service, but first it's about being the elected official to be the chief law enforcement officer of the county. And you need experience to do that, and law enforcement experience. I have the most of that. I understand the issues that we have to face here. I'm a progressive leader. I'm a collaborative leader. I foster free thinking, and from that aspect, I think that I am the most qualified to be the next sheriff of Osceola County. I look at it from just a number of things where we have to involve the community. One of the things that I want to do is we have 9 sectors in this county that are split up for our policing zones. I'd like to have 9 separate police advisory boards or citizen advisory boards, if you want to call it that. That represent each of these sectors, because we all know that each sector or each area of our county is unique into itself. The things that happen in Kenansville are not necessarily alike what happens in Point Siena or Buenaventura Lakes or the city of Kissimmee. So having representation from a board in those 9 different areas of 3 to 5 people that we could meet with, quarterly to establish things in those neighborhoods, or go to when we have things like the issues we have now about police brutality and addressing community concerns, and have those specific boards in those areas to where we can address that. And no sheriff that in the past has done that, and no sheriff currently has, or no sheriff candidate or current sheriff has thought about doing those things. And I am a progressive leader, and I understand that we need to move beyond where we're at now. So I ask for your vote on August 18th, and God bless Osceola County. I love everybody that lives here. My family lives here. My kids live here. My grandkids live here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy to serve. I just, like I said, it's been a joy the 30 years that I've served at the sheriff's office, and I truly miss it.
Well, I think that wraps it up, guys. Anything more from Don and John? Do you want to kick in?
No, thank you.
Well, I'd like to just recap. We had a lot of people join in late. So tonight was offered to all 4 candidates for Osceola County Sheriff. Unfortunately, Mr. Fernandez had a recent death in the family. He wanted to be here tonight and unfortunately could not. We also reached out simultaneously, all 4, including Russ Gibson, the current sheriff, and he declined to be part of this evening. So we thank everybody here tonight. Mr. Lopez, certainly Mr. Fisher, both of you. I hope that this allotted an opportunity for people to hear from you and to understand why you're running for sheriff. I thank you very much. I'll use the word Don used earlier. I'm hugely honored that you guys would do this tonight with Positively Osceola. So thank you. I'll make sure that I have both of your the links to your digital assets so people can look more at what you guys are doing as far as candidates for Osceola County Sheriff. Don Long, been a friend a long time, part of the Lake Nona Regional Chamber of Commerce as the CEO. And of course, John Newstreet, also a friend from the Kissimmee Osceola County Chamber of Commerce. I would say this has been a trying time for businesses, organizations, and individuals. And when trying times come, you need to look for help. There just isn't better help out there from those organizations. So by all means, we'll have your links as well in the text of this of tonight's post. So thank you both for doing this. I hope you will do it again with us. I know you're both very busy, so I kind of super blessed that you guys would both be able to do this tonight. I just know that you juggle so much, so thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess that wraps it up, everybody. I want to thank all of you again for being part of tonight. I noticed as the comments were flying by tonight, didn't see lots of them. They were moving pretty quick, but I will see once in a while my eyes seized in on thanking everybody for being here tonight. And so we certainly appreciate it. So we'll sign off. Again, Marco Lopez, Mike Fisher, Don Long, John Newstreet, thank you for joining us tonight. Again, this is Keith with Positively Osceola. We are making a positive difference in the community, and that means everyone in the community together making a positive difference in Osceola County. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Marco, see you, buddy.
Thank you for your service, sir. See you.
See you guys. Yeah, thank you.